come mai hai scelto il fumetto? Con una carriera di illustratore hai scelto il fumetto per esprimere quella che è la tua critica sociale, critica politica, ritornando ad una modalità e le origini quale la striscia sul quotidiano.
Why did you choose comic art as your language and as a political and social critic?
I would say I didn't really choose it. It's just, one of those things that I guess it chose me or something. That sounds, it sounds pretty dumb, but it was just something I always loved doing, and eventually figured out it was a way for me to have a voice, and it was a way to do it very cheaply and very easily, and it's just one of those things where I never thought I'd be doing this for 12 years. I just started doing it for fun, having it, in my school paper, and having friends write and say, oh, that's really funny, and realized I really loved doing it and thought maybe I could do this for a living. So, it just became that, and what I write about in the comic is just what comes to me, what I'm feeling, what's inside. So it's, it tends not to, I don't even think of it as a choice, I think of it as just, what I do.
Ok, tra le prime strisce nei tempi dell'università ad oggi, Mr. Wiggle è diventato più cattivo o è la società che è diventata più cattiva?
From the university times till now, because Mr. Wiggle is uglier than superior or Mr. World society uglier.
Well, I think a lot of the early comics were focusing inward, and the later comics, I think, focus more out. So I don't think that society has changed much. I think a lot of it is, my own personal feelings, and I think a lot of it, I started when I was 21 years old, and I think at that point, all you think about is yourself. Where it's all about, well, how am I feeling? What's wrong with me? And why doesn't this girl like me? And why isn't this thing? And blah, blah, blah. And, and then you get older and you have, relationships, and you're like, oh, I'm not so bad, And then you start going, wait, if I'm not so bad, what else is wrong? And you start looking at everything else. And so I think, I don't think the world has changed too much. I think it's essentially the same, although, we were discussing earlier, it seems politically things are moving more towards the right, and, depending on where you stand on that issue, there's, some thoughts you have. But I think people are still essentially the same that they've always been, and a lot of the work, I think, is really just about me growing as a person, and me also having explored so many things that you don't want to go back on what you've done. You want to explore new territory.
Quante email o attacchi sui giornali di critica o minaccia ricevi a proposito di quello che dice Mr. Wiggle?
How many mails you Mr. Wiggle?
Wait, how many what?
How many mails, how many do you receive about Mr. Wiggle's critic attacks?
Very little. Very little, yeah. Yeah. I could probably count, I guess in English we call it hate mail. I could count that probably on one hand, over 12 years of having done the comic. I get
press or...
Well, to me personally, to the paper, that's a whole different story. They don't write me and say, oh, we got some people who hate what you've done. They tend to shield me from that stuff. So I find out about that after the fact, where I'll go to the Internazionale offices and they'll say, oh yes, and we had this horrible letter here where somebody said, why did we do that and that and that? But I don't really see it. So I only know the ones that get sent to me personally, and that's very few.
Ok. Sei stato mai censurato in qualche modo dai giornali che poi pubblicano le strisce?
Did the newspaper cut out or censor your
Yeah.
scripts?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Internazionale doesn't change what I do, but there are a few strips that they've not run for whatever reasons. But I know that if they haven't run them in the magazine, they'll put them in the books. So I know that there's like been some of the books here that for whatever reasons they decided, oh, you know, we can't do this. You know, in America, I've definitely had issues where I've had to face more censorship and, you know, make concessions on a couple of comic strips. Like I have one paper that won't let me use the F word, you know, fuck. You know, they won't let me print that, so I have to rewrite that word, and it's kind of silly, but, you know, that's definitely one thing that I do change for them. You know, and every once in a while they'll, you know, write if I do a particularly disturbing comic. You know, they don't like the child molestation jokes a lot, so I do one paper that I know every week when if I do one of those that they're not going to run that comic. So there are a few of them, but you know, I tend to not worry about that. I do whatever I want to do, and then if they don't want to run the comic, or they, you know, I mean, they don't alter it, which is good. Nobody alters it without my permission, but more often than not, they just will choose not to run it that week, and that's their problem, not mine.
Can I cancel complete stories, complete strips, or just content?
Wait, what's that?
They cancel.
They won't run it. Yeah. Well, usually what they'll do is run an older comic instead in its place. They won't like have just a blank spot.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, you know, if they're having to censor you too much, they just fire you at a certain point. But luckily, I haven't had that happen too often.
Le tendenze devianti che in qualche modo riprendi e amplifichi facendo parlare Mr. Winkle sono secondo te universali, quindi potrebbero esistere sono attuabili in qualsiasi paese, o sono tipiche americane? Le devianze, cioè le devianze che descrive dalla voce di Mr. Winkle, che sono tipiche americane oppure sono applicate?
The behaviors of Mr. Winkle that Mr. Winkle is describing are worldly or American, just American or whatever?
No, I think they're worldly. You know, I think that that's why it resonates with people, is because a lot of what I talk about I don't think is very American-centric. I think it's, you know, human emotions. They're things that we feel. And, you know, and there are a few comics here and there which it does help to have an American mindset and know like what maybe some of the references are, but for the most part, they're just basic, you know, kind of human things, which I think we can all relate to.
In Italia in particolare ci sarebbe qualche tematica in più rispetto a quelle che già Mr. Winkle prende di mira, su cui invece si potrebbe scrivere, Mr. Winkle potrebbe divertirsi?
Are in Italy some particular subjects that Mr. Winkle could describe? In Italy, something particularly Italian, not humanist, not worldly, but Italian, some subject, some theme that in Italy Mr. Winkle could describe.
What do you mean by could describe?
Describe, could talk about.
Oh, so something that Mr. Winkle.
An Italian story by Mr. Winkle, for example.
I'm not sure I'm understanding now.
For example, sometimes Mr. Winkle talk about the Pope. The Pope is particularly Italian, you know. It's not worldly, it's Italian.
Right.
Have you ever a typical Italian behavior to hit by the word of Mr. Winkle?
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to do some more Italian, you know, related things. The things I feel like I need to learn a lot more, because I don't want to be ignorant about something if I'm gonna make jokes about it. But you know, I think the Pope is always a great target, you know, just because of some of the, you know, religious things that have such a large effect on the country. You know, like friends of mine who, you know, are gay and are not able to, you know, say like have certain adoption rules or things like that. You know, like you know, that's wrong with gay marriage, which I know he doesn't really approve of, and things like that. I mean, that's very easy for me to comment on and target, Because again, they're like anything that's sort of like a basic human right, which I deem that to be a pretty basic right, like, and it doesn't hurt anybody, so why, you know, does he have such a say over that? So that's like something I feel like Mr. Wiggles could talk about. You know, in terms of Italian politics, I'd love to learn more about that, because he could have a field day with Italian politics.
E quindi che cosa insegni ai tuoi studenti per imparare ad essere, per trasmettere la tua comicità sostanzialmente, il tuo sguardo sulla realtà?
How do you teach your students to be like you?
I teach them not to. No, that's kidding. You know, I really teach them the first thing that they need to do is have, you know, a work ethic and a work commitment, because it's hard. You know, it's hard to make a living doing something creatively. It doesn't matter what field, if it's writing or if it's art or if it's comics, it's all hard to do. So, you know, I teach them first and foremost they have to put the time in and the effort, and then they need to find the thing that they love about it and the passion that they have, because it takes a long time to build up. Success doesn't happen, you know, overnight. For some, occasionally, one or two people, you know, it might, but for most people it takes years and years and years. So while you're trying to build this up, you have to pay the rent, you have to do other things, and so at the end of the day, you have to be able to come home after having worked another job and focus on this and building this whole thing up. So, you know, a lot of what I teach them is how to do that and how to find that passion that they've got and recognize when they have that. The rest of it, I think, is just, you know, really about doing the best work that you can. And I think if you're passionate about the work that you're doing and you're having fun doing it, it shows in the work. I think it shows when somebody isn't having fun and they're just like, oh, I just gotta get it done, don't care, you know. And that work is never good, you know. But I think the work we respond to is the work where you look at it and you say, that guy or that girl, they had a blast doing that. Like, there was nothing in the world they wanted to be doing other than that one thing. And that's really evident, you know, you can tell that. So, you know, aside from that, the rest of it is really just how to promote yourself and how to get people interested in your work and how to maintain, you know, those connections and how to just deal with some of the regular business things that come up. And that's what I teach my students. Ciao!